that lends a lot of credibility. If you come in and can be upfront and honest and say, actually in this application, I think this product over here that I don't represent would be better for you. That all of a sudden now you become a trusted advisor rather than a salesman.
And I often say that we have all the requirements of space, right? Because it has to go underground and send us data from miles and miles away, and it has to work. Like, failure is not an option.
We'll put on, a standard mule shoe. Ours is slightly different just for that, but it's, everybody's got one.
The top drive and the drawworks really don't care whether the electrons coming at it are from a joystick or a PLC.
The panel, what you see here on the left, which is now controlled by one of my students, is showing you actually the control of our brakes.
As of now, geothermal is a pretty small market.
If you have tortuosity, the casing will be up against the side on part of the well. There won't be any cement there. The cement will have crescent around it.
So managed pressure drilling, it's been defined as a process to precisely control the pressure profile in the wellbore.
The key is being transparent with our clients in this case. So tell them what happened. If we had a failure, tell them exactly what happened. Whether it's our fault, whether it's whatever the issue was, we need to be transparent.
I think it's very important for everyone in the industry to know what's out there and kind of what's happening downhole as well.
I've probably worked on over 40 different performance limiters in my career. If I miss any of those and the computer is raising weight on bit and I miss any of those, I have a train wreck. The computer's going in the ocean.
Here's your new colors, here's your new thing. We don't do that at all.
Here's the tattoo you need to get.
Yeah, here's the tattoo. Sorry about the last one. We used to fake that all the time.
Good morning, everybody. Obviously, if you're seeing me, you know what time it is. It's Friday and it's 10 a.m. Welcome to finishing out another short week. This is the Vidor Locksmith Show. I am your host, David Gibson, where we are unlocking the secrets to success in the oil and gas industry. One interview, one technical presentation, and definitely one technical screw up at a time. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really do appreciate it. Really excited about today's show. I know I say that every week, but that's because I do get excited about this. Like, this is fun. That's why I do this. And hopefully, bringing everything to you guys every Friday like this. And if you want to watch the old ones, they're over there on YouTube. They're also here on LinkedIn, but it's kind of hard to find. So don't worry about that. Just find them on YouTube. Hopefully you guys are also getting something out of this. I'm always open to suggestions as well. I want to be able to put that out there this week so that if you think that there's somebody out there in our industry who's doing an amazing job and we should be able to highlight them, whether it's on a technical side, soft skill side, or just would be interesting to hear from, let me know. Always happy to be able to bring on new talent and new faces and new perspectives onto the show. Speaking of new talent and new faces, I've got somebody I want to introduce everybody to. Make sure I do this without making a big mistake. I am tickled pink about this. Guys, look at how big this guy is. I 3D printed this. And he's holding one of the little Gibson Report drill bits. I literally walked into my house yesterday with this, like holding him like a baby. I dropped part of it. All right. That's the new thing. I just wanted to show that to everybody. It's pretty cool. My son is going to lose his mind when he sees this. So just figured I'd show everybody. It's kind of fun. It's hanging out here on my desk. And then I've got there's another little one. It's got the Gibson Report sticker on there. It's even funnier when I do this. I know I'm just kind of like wasting time on today's show, not like doing the normal routine here. Let's see if I can I'm trying to decapitate the other one now. I can get it. Oh, ow. Actually hurt my wrist. Lord. It's kind of funny when you do this one. Put the big head on the little guy. For some reason, that just looks hilarious. It'll focus. Oh, look, autofocus will work when the Lego head's on the screen. Thanks, Panasonic. Anyways, thank you guys for being here. All right, let's see who's tuning in. Melanie Woods here saying, looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for being here. Man, morning, David. All okay. Everything is going great. Already. Oh, wait. Ooh. Scott Petrie, who's going to be a part of the MPD event that's coming up. And I have not pulled up the banner thing for that. I should actually do that here in just a second. So yeah, his company, Agile Tech, is going to be part of the Managed Pressure Drilling event on June 16th. We've already had over 10,000 people sign up for it. Absolutely insane. If you haven't signed up for it already, please go and do it. Artie Morrison, good morning, sir. LinkedIn user, thank you for being here. Morning. I'm seeing some stuff in the background. It looks like Andrew is having fun out in the woods. Looks like she's hiking. LinkedIn user tuning in from Algeria. That is insane. Love the Lego. I love it too. Did you shrink, David? That Lego guy is huge. Yes. Mr. Abercrombie says, good morning from San Antonio. Mr. Deaton says, good morning. LinkedIn user, spin the head for a true representation of real life. And then LinkedIn user saying hello from rainy Houston. All right, guys, let me know where you're watching from. If this is your first episode to ever tune in for, and if you like the Lego head, let us know. All right. It was a pretty quick one. We got through everybody pretty quick. Good morning, David. Enjoy the Lego. My first passion to get me into doing engineering. Look forward to this one with Joe. Yes, I'm definitely looking forward to this one with Joe. Joe's there in the background, breathing heavy, looking ready. Samir says, hello from Spain. Salinas tuning in. Sorry. Little thing from my intern just popped up, who's doing an amazing job, by the way. Roscoe, obviously you're not watching the show today. That's cool. Don't worry about it. Marquez says, good morning, David. Always enjoy your shows. Thanks, everybody, for being here. All right. Give me a thumbs up, Andrea, if you're ready to go. Okay, so she's ready to go. Just wanted to make sure before running on the ski. She's doing something a little bit different today. So, Andrea's an absolutely amazing person, and an even more amazing drilling engineer. The more I get to know her and to kind of sort of work with her, I think that there's no doubt that just like Keith, she will be the one taking over the show in not too long. So as we started it was a couple of months back, started the thing with Fahim, who's an engineer working with me, doing some AI stuff. And then we were working with Keith Stelter. All right, I want to say the name right. We're working with Keith to be able to help him and his job search. And now we're helping Andrea in her job search. Absolutely amazing drilling engineer. You need to get her on your team before you miss out. And so here is your minute with Andrea.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, David, again for that kind introduction. Just a pro tip, if anybody can guess where I'm at in the comments, I will send you a prize today. So you could be a double prize winner. So just check it in the comments. Let me know where you think I'm at. Drilling tip of the day is to know your limits. We deal with a ton of equipment, and all of that equipment has limits and safety factors. Try to take a moment today to make sure you can go through your rig inventory, look at maybe your circulating system. Do you know what your limits are and where you can redesign them? Something that I found to work is maybe you need a little bit more pressure while drilling the lateral. Go ahead and swap those liners out. Maybe you don't need that flow rate anymore, and you can use a higher pressure liner. Or maybe if you need a little bit more solids control equipment, you could have another set of dryer shakers to help with dealing with maybe increased rate of penetration in a lower compressive strength rock. So again, know your limits and enjoy the show. Thanks, David.
I have no idea where she's at, so don't ask me. And I have no idea if she's going to keep track and keep running this whole thing. I would fully expect that she would probably turn this off, and I'll just have to go back to her later and say who all was watching or who guessed. So yeah, if you guys want to guess and have any try it where Andrew is at, let me know. And this autofocus thing is driving me nuts. There we go. Woo. All right, don't move. I got to step back a little bit further. It's already on my to-do list. I'm going to buy a different camera, or at least not a different one. I'm just going to upgrade the one that I've got. Oh yeah, it is a different one, but it's along the same lines. It'll be an upgrade. So anyways, all right, guys. All right. I got to do this. Todd Brooker, tune in. Love the show. Always from rainy Austin. It is kind of rainy today, a little bit. Andrew Richard, good morning, sir. Everyone in this space. LinkedIn user, steering wells from Austin, Texas. Who is this? Who's somebody else in Austin area? Awesome. I know where she's not at. Nowhere near West Texas. Too many trees. All right. Anyone interested in hiring Andrea, here is the link to her LinkedIn profile. Thank you so much, Melanie. It's so awesome taking care of everybody. All right. So let's do a giveaway. For all of the people that are watching. Yes, let me see if I can find it. Sorry. All right, in the comment section, whether you're watching on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or on Facebook, all you got to do is type in #Gibson. That's it. It is case sensitive though, so be sure to recognize it. It is case sensitive. Type in #Gibson, and then we will start a giveaway once we get it to, I don't know, like 20. Actually, you know what? I'm going to let this run the entire episode. Let's just let this run the entire episode, and if you're still watching at the end and you're still here, then you get the prize. So not just giving away stuff at the beginning, let's give it away at the end. But #Gibson throughout the entire episode. So there you go. And then we would have that ready to go. So there we go. All right. So everybody's starting to bring it in now. Starting to type in #Gibson. We've already got up to 10 entries, but we're going to continue running this throughout the episode. All right. So my guest for today is an absolutely amazing individual. He is a twin dad. He is an entrepreneur. He used to be a MWD field hand for Schlumberger. So our paths have been very, very, very similar. So I want to bring in our guest today. Make sure I hit the right button here. All right, got that set. There we go. Joe Sinnott. Joe, thank you so much for being here, sir. I really do appreciate it. Why in the world would you even want to come on this show?
Well, I heard some rumors that you were going to have some fun new friends with you, and lo and behold, they were the Lego characters. So they were my primary reason, but from what I've watched, it's a pretty decent show too. So I figured, why not?
All right, Joe. Obviously, I have seen a lot of your stuff that you've put out on LinkedIn, and I have to say, you were very eloquent. You were very good with your videos and stuff, and I was just thinking, I was like, wow, this guy, like, professionalism just like oozes out from the stuff that you're doing. And so I've just had to be able to bring you on the show. So for the people that don't know who you are and don't know your background, give us an introduction to who you are, what's your background, and like what got you to where you are today.
Sure. Well, if we go back to the beginning, I grew up in northern New Jersey, about 15 miles outside of New York City. From there, went to school at Notre Dame, studied chemical engineering. And long story short, my grades weren't quite good enough to get a real chemical engineering job. So when Schlumberger offered me a job senior year, it was sort of a no-brainer there. And that was my jump into the oil and gas industry. So started off with Schlumberger, worked offshore Gulf of Mexico for 3 years, lived down in southern Louisiana. And then in 2008, moved up to Pittsburgh and began working for what was then Equitable Resources, and then since became EQT. So I was with EQT for 11 years, was very lucky to rotate through a number of different engineering roles. So reserve development, drilling engineering, completion engineering, managed the reserves process, a number of different other roles, logistical, strategy, forecasting, whole bunch of stuff that really allowed me to see this company continue to grow and evolve into what ultimately became the largest producer of natural gas in the United States. So a very fortunate journey that, again, began almost by accident. I had no familiarity with the oil and gas industry. I often joke, probably too often, that growing up in New Jersey, it was against the law for me to pump my own gas. So for me to then wind up on a drilling rig obviously was not a path that I would have ever predicted. But lo and behold, 15 years in, I had the privilege of, again, seeing lots of different things, and also had the privilege of my career at EQT coming to an end in 2019 as part of a sweeping change of management, if you will. So me, along with a couple hundred other folks, were given the opportunity to move on to something else. And that something else that I moved on to is executive coaching. So, I'm speaking today, certainly with that background, which was mostly technical and some other leadership roles, but I'm speaking today primarily as a coach, as someone who now helps people who are navigating their winding paths through this industry primarily. And being able to leverage that background of mine, which again, was nothing I ever planned. And for a lot of people right now, no matter where they are in their career, clearly you can't plan out exactly what they're going to do. So as we go through this show today, my hope is to help get people to ask the right questions to maybe make that path maybe a little bit smoother or at least more sustainable. That's kind of the pitch, and what I do is sustainable leadership. Make sure as you're making decisions, it's being done in a way that allows you to keep moving forward and keep leveraging whatever experiences you have and whatever opportunities are thrown at you. So with that big rambling introduction, here I am, and again, very happy to be here with you today, Dave.
Well, Joe, thank you so much. So I want to get into kind of like, I know we talked about before, like your pillars of leadership, but I got to ask, like, obviously being an executive coach, like I see those, I don't want to say those type of people, but those profiles on LinkedIn a lot. And most of the ones that I see that are saying that they're business coaches or life coaches or whatever, they're usually what I would have guessed probably somewhere around 22 to 23, or somebody who's been in like their career for maybe 4 or 5 years, and then they stop, they haven't run a business, they haven't done the stuff. So how hard is it for you to be able to differentiate yourself from like so many other people out there that are essentially, I guess, trying to get into the same space or thinking that they're qualified to be in that space?
Yeah, great question. Definitely something that was on my mind a lot as I decided to transition, and it seemed like lots of other people were doing the exact same thing. As far as how easy it is to differentiate, again, I'm very fortunate to sort of be in that sweet spot, to have 15 years in a corporate environment, to have been on the service side of the oil and gas industry, to have been on the operator side, to have then led technical roles and data roles and planning roles and all those types of things. So right out of the gate, I have that experience. But by far the biggest differentiator is the fact that I'm focused on the energy industry. I'm focused on oil and gas. And a lot of people who jump into coaching, frankly, it's a mistake that I think a lot of people can make in their careers they go too general, too big, and they don't hone in on where they can best make an impact. And for me, given my background, obviously that's in oil and gas. So by far the biggest differentiator is, this is the world I've been in. I've got a passion for it. And again, I'll be honest, you brought up age, right? You brought up the fact that, there's a lot of people who might be in their early to mid 20s who are jumping into the coaching world. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. They can bring a lot to the table. But for me to be in that sweet spot almost directly between the average C-suite age and the average person who's coming out of school and entering the workforce, it really is a blessing, if you will. I guess all thanks to my parents, and whenever I showed up in the world there in 1982, it's a blessing to be right there in the middle from a credibility standpoint, from a perspective standpoint, to be able to connect those things, because that's what I do, right? I mean, it's connecting ideas, it's connecting disparate thoughts, it's connecting specific things within the oil and gas industry to general leadership themes, and to also be able to connect things generationally, again, is a differentiator that I'm very fortunate to be able to tout for some period of time. Obviously, that's one of those fleeting benefits as I continue to age here, but for now, it's definitely a differentiator.
All right, I got to do something real quick. Okay, Ezra, you only need to put it in one time, just once. Guys, just one time is all you got to do it. You can do it on LinkedIn and on YouTube. You don't have to keep doing it. So, and there goes another one. Just one time, guys. Just one time. That's all it takes. All right. Just like they just keep hitting up in my peripheral. So it's like gotta get that. All right. So obviously, then you're focused on being able to do the coaching here within the oil and gas industry. And so this makes me want to ask, like how did you go about setting up, like what did you kind of do before kicking this thing off and building the foundation of what you were going to be able to, I don't want to say preach, but to be able to educate on? And how did that process start for you?
Sure. Well, the BS answer, if you will, is that for 15 years I was laying the groundwork for all of this. But the reality is, I knew with a couple months heads up before ultimately losing my job that my time was going to be coming to an end. So, quite frankly, David, I had the luxury of being able to think through, all right, well, what is it that led to whatever success I had throughout my career? What is it that I enjoyed? What is it that I was good at? What is it that I was not so good at? So I had the luxury of having a couple month period of introspection, retrospection, whatever you want to call it, to go back and look on those years of experience and start putting things together. So it was during that period of time that I realized, hey, coaching checks a lot of boxes. It makes a lot of sense. And And I'd had exposure to coaching. I was fortunate enough to have had an executive coach during my time with EQT, so I was familiar with it. So I used that time to ask questions and talk to other people who were in the coaching world to really figure out that by the time my time came to an end at EQT, that this was going to be it. And so from a logistical standpoint, some of the things I did is I began taking a formal coaching class. And again, anybody can call themselves a coach, and that's fine. And there's also probably hundreds of coaching certification programs, and they pretty wide spectrum. I took one that was in the middle of the road that was going to let me at least, again, see some of the nuts and bolts behind this, so that when I went ahead and did this, it was something that, again, was sustainable, was something that I was going to enjoy for years to come and not just have it fade. So that was one thing, formally, taking some classes and obviously asking other folks. I would say during that couple-month period there, my lame duck period, if you will, at EQT, I was also able to be somewhat conscious in terms of consciously being a coach. I was fortunate enough to have led very different teams throughout my time there. So I was still very much in a leadership role, but it was also interesting to be able to do it now with a conscious coach's hat on. I never would have called myself a coach before that, but during that period of time, I was able to actively coach and really go above and beyond and asking people questions and helping those who were worried about their careers, make better decisions and ask better questions and, practice interviews and things like that. And so I was, again, able to almost do a trial run so that when my time finally came to an end at the end of 2019, I was ready to go and ready to, start calling myself a coach on LinkedIn, ready to have a business. I think coincidentally, it wound up being incorporated the day before I was ultimately let go. So, the timing all just kind of worked out. So, those were some of the logistical things to know that, look, I'm ready to go. This is what I want to do. And then since then, obviously, have honed my framework, if you will, that I use based on my prior experiences, and now based on my experiences actually working with people in the formal capacity as a coach.
So was it like a eureka moment for you, or did you get one of those, how did it feel when you kind of finally figured out, like, this is what I'm going to do?
It very much was a eureka moment. Some people have, when I've described it, said it's like, lightning struck, whatever you want to call it. In the interest of time, I'll pare it down, but essentially, my wife left me alone in the house one evening to clean up while she took the kids off to local pool. And when she came home 2 hours later, nothing had been cleaned up. I had barely moved because in that period of time, this rush of, oh my, like, this is it. It's coaching. This is what I need to do. And it was one 2 hour period. She came home. Obviously, she already knew I was partially crazy, and this kind of confirmed it. But it all made sense. I was there. My thumbs were sore because I was tabbing. I remember I didn't even take the couple steps to go and move over to the laptop and type out my thoughts. I was literally just tapping on my phone, and they just kept coming, and almost just plotting out like all of these ideas and all of these things that just made sense. So, yeah, David, it was a very defined, specific eureka moment when it all clicked.
How does it feel like looking back on that?
I think it offers some validation when, you start having doubts, right? Going back to what you said, it's like, is everybody going to be a coach? Am I really going to be that different? What about the people that have been coaching for 30, 40 years? That's the world they've been in. Or what about, the ex-CEO who rose through the ranks and, worked internationally and did all these things? I can't touch that. And you go back and you say, well, wait a sec. No, it was crystal clear then. It made perfect sense then. And if I need to put on my engineer's hat and say, all right, well, here's exactly why it works, and here's why, the answer was and will continue to be coaching, I can do that. But it is nice to be able to look back and say, yeah, you know what? Few people are, I think, fortunate enough to have that crystal clear moment, and I had that, and it's great.
Awesome. Well, all right. So give us a little bit here. I know you've got some pillars or foundational blocks of your leadership. Take us through what those are.
Sure. So I think at a high level, before we jump through the 5 specific stops, pillars, whatever you want to call them, everything that I do in the world of coaching is driven by this idea of GPS for leaders. This is, again, everybody's got their little marketing scheme, right? But, the GPS in this case stands for grow, protect, and sustain. At every step along the way, when you're trying to make decisions about in your career, your company, your family, whatever it happens to be, I try to help people ask, all right, well, how well are you going to continue growing? And are you protecting the things that are worth protecting? Because not everything's worth protecting. And are you doing it in a way that's sustainable? So grow, protect, sustain. That's the framework. That's the GPS idea. And yeah, it's a cute acronym there that works. But more importantly, and hopefully we see some of this as we wind through the conversation today, this GPS idea is very applicable to leaders, because as a leader, you're the driver. You're the one with your hands on the wheel, right? You're deciding whether to accelerate or decelerate or turn left or turn right. And there's so much stuff out there. There's so much self-help stuff. There's so many videos and workshops and classes. And I think I saw it was like 16,000 LinkedIn learnings, which are great. But at the end of the day, those things aren't going to be pushing you forward. You can't just rely on those. You need to make a decision. You want resources that are going to help you think more clearly and make better decisions. And in many ways, that's what a GPS is in your car, right? It offers suggestions. It'll help see ahead. It'll help recognize if there's traffic. It'll give you the option to take the scenic route or a more direct route or whatever the case might be. But you are still in charge, and you need to make real-time decisions. And so that's the other reason that this GPS idea works for leaders who sometimes can slip into this idea that, they just want somebody telling them what they do. They just want an advisor to come in and say, turn left, turn right, do this or that. But of course, that's not what they're getting paid for. Or if it's just you worrying about your career, again, nobody's going to be out there telling you exactly where to go. You want the right information to help you get there. So as we go through these 5 pillars today, this GPS idea hopefully rings true, because I want people engaging. I want people asking questions. Feel free to interrupt me, David, if there's a good question, because I want to touch on these 5 things, because these are the things that can help people, again, make better decisions. They can use this as a framework in their own careers. I'm not going to tell anybody what to think or do. So we're going to get through this material in one way, shape, or form, but how we get there, I don't really care. So if there's questions that, kind of weave us back and forth, and we pluck some different examples from the oil and gas industry that tie into these leadership themes that are maybe different from the ones I would typically use, great. So again, I encourage people to kind of direct the path, choose your own adventure, whatever you want to do. Because again, that's what a leader needs to do. And quite frankly, that's what anybody needs to do. You need to have some level of dynamism to turn left and turn right, and to do it based on your surroundings and not just based on some preordained map or set of directions that you're working with. So all that being said.
There we go. All right. Joe said it. You guys, if you've got any questions throughout any of this, throw them out there, give them to us. We'll get them up on the screen. We'll get these questions answered. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity to be able to work essentially with an executive coach here live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. But you guys, if you've got any questions, be sure to throw them out there. All right. So what's the first one?
All right. So the first pillar, the first leadership pillar that ties into the oil and gas industry is exploration. And again, we're going to step through 5 phases of the energy life cycle that tie in very nicely to leadership. And of course, the first of which is exploration. And this works out very nicely in the oil and gas industry, but so too in the renewable world, right? You're looking for an offshore wind farm or a solar farm or whatever it is. You're going out, you're exploring. You have some idea of what you want, and you're looking for the best place to poke a hole in the ground if it's oil and gas, or lay out your network of renewable energy. So exploration. And in this phase, the questions that you need to be asking yourself are, all right, well, how do I define myself? Because David, you do a very good job of emphasizing in each show, know your industry, right? Know your industry. Well, knowing your industry is key for success in the industry, but knowing yourself and knowing those around you is also key. So you need to figure out in this exploration phase, again, who are you? How do you identify yourself? And I know I had a piece on this a week or two ago about identity crises, because very much in this world of executive coaching, what I'm dealing with is identity crises. So whether it's at the corporate level, where, again, leaders are trying to navigate the various ESG pressures and the pressures of the industry and changing commodity prices, there can be identity crises, especially as we consolidate and companies go bankrupt and change their vision. So from a corporate standpoint, there's identity crises. And from an individual standpoint, especially people that are going through, changing careers, what is your identity? And so this is the point where you need to ask yourself, all right, well, what is my identity tied to? Because far too many people that I work with don't realize until it's too late that their identity is tied very closely to their career, to their title, to their industry. And when they get to a point where they might be faced with losing their job or maybe faced with retirement, that could be pretty shocking to them. And, for a lot of people, I could say, maybe I'll separate folks into 2 camps. There's the camp where they recognize that they don't want their identity tied up in their industry or their title or their job or their company. And it's something bigger than that. It's something different than that. It's their family. It's they're something faith related. It's their community, whatever it is. And again, the sooner they can recognize that, the easier it will be to navigate changes in their career and organization or whatever the case might be. But then there's another camp of people who are very much identified by their industry. There's people who love oil and gas, and there's nothing wrong with that. They say, they might say, Joe, this is me. I got crude running through my veins, whatever the case might be. I love it. This is my identity. And to them, I say, great. But you also need to recognize that. You also need to recognize that something happens to the industry. If there's a downturn, you will suffer in some way, shape, or form, and you need to be prepared. And like I said before, one of the pillars is protecting what's important to you. And you want to protect your true identity, but the first thing you need to do is identify it. You need to explore what that is. So again, for those of you out there watching, regardless of where you're at, ask yourself, what is it that you identify as? If you're a reservoir engineer and that's who you are, and you walk around town with a, I heart decline curve t-shirt, that's fine. But you need to be aware when, things inevitably change that, if somebody takes that away from you, is that going to be a much bigger impact on your ability to focus, your ability to make decisions than it needs to be. So that's the biggest takeaway there. Again, happy to circle back to some of these. I mean, it's just like most things, it's not terribly linear, but you got a question.
Well, here's the first question. Sal McCoy says, potential question. From those who you coach, or from those you coach, what's been the most common blind spot or unexpected hurdle? I didn't think X would cause an issue, or I struggled with Y and never thought I would. An amazing question. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that.
It is. And I think the answer, it's under the umbrella of complacency. And I will readily admit to fueling this, especially in my prior life, where people just assume that oil and gas is going to be around forever. And there's some truth to that. I always say from a gambling standpoint, you always bet with a streak, right? We've been around for 160 years. Things are going to continue. But a lot of people it just never clicked that at some point we might only need, again, pick a percentage, 30% of the reservoir engineers that we've needed, on a per barrel basis for the last, again, several decades. So I think it's complacency. And the further you get into something, especially if it's a niche and it's a specific area of a specific industry, the easier it is to just ignore those warning signs. They say, yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be able to pivot. And a lot of people do. But again, what I preach is awareness. It's consciousness. If you go into this knowing that, there's an 80% chance that, I quit picking on reservoir engineers. You can say geology. If you're a geologist, a petroleum geologist, and going into this that there's an 80% chance that, you're probably not going to be able to find the type of job that you really want to have 10 years from now. And you go into this knowing that, that's huge. Get that out there. Don't kid yourself. But a lot of people unwittingly kid themselves. And again, that's where just people asking the right questions, whether it's a formal coach or whether it's a friend or, typically whether it's somebody who is completely ignorant of what you do and why you do it, boosting that awareness now lets you make the best decisions on how to proceed and how to, again, fortify yourself against downturns. Because again, I don't show up with a bunch of solutions. I help you identify the problem and then help you identify the solutions to that complacency, if you will, or to the realities of job numbers going forward, so that you can use your own brain to make the turn left or right or to accelerate or decelerate as the case might be.
Yeah, I think it's great because I know that a lot of times that I've talked to people in the industry and with a lot of the changes that take place, I always kind of go back to saying that, most people see themselves in getting a job, and the more experience they get, that their value to the company or whatever that they provide is just going to continue to grow. And the most set, I would say, their mindset is that their value proposition, their personal value proposition is going to grow at, kind of a linear state, right? The more years that you're in the industry, that, your value just kind of keeps going up and up and up, regardless of what takes place in the industry. I see it all the time. It's like, oh, I've got 20 years of experience in the industry. Why are people not hiring me? Well, because the value proposition for that experience has completely changed. It's not worth what it used to be worth. It's worth something completely different, and that completely different has shifted down. It's not going up. And so, tack on another 10 years experience. That doesn't mean you get to charge, 10x more or 10 plus more or whatever the number is. That's not how it correlates. And so I think it's great that you bring that up. It's just, seeing that, the value that you have, does the industry value that exactly the same as it does now, as it does, 10 years from now, which is an amazing question to be able, the way you put it is much more eloquent than mine. So I really liked it.
No, and honestly, David, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Again, in terms of people who find themselves on a trajectory, it's easy to castigate the person who was sat in their cubicle and done one thing for 30 years and they are content as can be, and again, maybe ignorant of how unstable that might be. But it's the people who have been on a nice, steady trajectory that can get. Again, I was one of those people. I mean, I had a great trajectory. I had the support of management all the way up the chain, and that all changed very quickly. We had 4 CEO changes in a 2-year span. All of that management that was supporting me, in a matter of a couple months was gone, and that changes very quickly. So, follow up on what you said and Sean's question. One of the other things that could be dangerous in all of this is when you have, call them enablers, when you're looking at resources who are constantly telling you it's going to be okay. You're a rock star. You're going to be, you're going to lead this company someday. Or you're going to go do great things. And there's individuals that do that. That's not helpful. That's not coaching. Yeah, a little bit of rah-rah, a little bit of motivational speeches once in a while. That's fine. But when you get that into your head, and then you couple it with a lot of the feel-good self-help materials and mantras and all of this, which again have value, but when you couple those things together, that's a dangerous combination, especially for people who are high potential and who have been doing great things and who have had the support of people in the industry and who have every reason to believe, maybe again somewhat ignorantly, that things are going to be okay for the next 10 or 20 years of the career. So anyway, you brought up a great point.
So what do you think is a good way to be able to not just recognize that, but then to be able to solve that problem and think that, okay, maybe there's the potential that, where I'm at right now, let's say it's a 50-50 shot. There's a 50% chance that I can be in this not same job role, but same category, same company, same, entrepreneurial journey, could be here in 10 more years, or in 10 years, it could be completely gone, right? What would you say then for that person that, should they be spending, X amount of their time on the side developing new and different skill sets, or trying to, diversify their personal brand, as you said, like how do they identify themselves? If they're a reservoir engineer, should they be looking at, becoming a data analyst? If they're a geologist, should they be looking at, like a renewables energy expert? Like how would you go about advising that situation?
Well, the first step is to not give advice until I obviously have a full picture, and even then probably not give advice, because all of those paths make sense. And it's a common question, right? I mean, that's everybody wants to know. And I feel like that's, one of the biggest things that's happened over the last, whatever it is, 16 months now is, people are more inclined than ever to just ask, what should I do? What are other people doing? People are way more interested in what are other people doing? What avenue are they doing? How many people are going and taking, data classes or whatever? Because again, it's human nature. You want answers. But the first step, and again, maybe this is a bit of a cop-out, is to go to the exploration step here, is before we do any of that stuff, let's take the time to figure out, all right, who are you? What drives you? What is it that will bring you satisfaction? What is it that fuels you and brings you happiness, and whatever all those things are? And again, some of the stuff can get a little hokey, especially for people in the oil and gas industry find themselves a bit hardened, but it is such a critical step before you get into the tactical step, which might actually be a nice segue to pillar number 2 here, if we want to move on. So, once you have an idea of what you want to do and who you are, you come up with a strategy, you come up with a plan, you develop it, right? You have an asset, you've gone out and you've got this great reservoir, and well, what do you do now? You're going to develop it. And in that development phase, you come up with a plan. But the question that you need to ask yourself here is, well, how are you measuring performance in this plan of yours, in this strategy to, again, extract the most from your potential or whatever the case might be? Because one of the biggest problems that occurs in this development step is this idea of false choices. People just determine, hey, you know what, I can go strategy A or strategy B. They pick strategy A, and then that's it. They put the blinders on. And again, this is the phase where you and your audience and anybody needs to ask themselves, all right, well, in what ways am I holding on to some approach or somebody else's approach that might not work anymore? How much am I going back and revisiting that pillar one, that exploratory phase? In the case that you brought up for me, my aha moment, my eureka moment. How much am I going back and revisiting that as I tweak my strategy? And it works from a corporate standpoint and it works from an individual standpoint. And where I see this often, again, there's plenty of examples in the oil and gas industry, but one of which can be in just your logistics and your operations planning. Do you have more of a set it and forget it mentality where everything is going to be just in time and you're going to be super precise? Or do you lean more towards, this flexible approach where you're more dynamic and you can serve your clients' needs, or if you're an operator, there's opportunities come up and you're flexible. Well, each of those have trade-offs, right? But some people get so stuck in one way or the other, and that becomes their gospel. So too with just the overall development strategy for companies who are trying to develop their assets. And what was that strategy for the shale industry? It was growth, right? Grow. You've had David Ramsden Wood on the show. I mean, that is his banner, right? Is you got to stop growing. You guys are killing yourselves. And what happened? Well, what happened? But people get so hung up on that one strategy, and it consumes them. And the strategy is not your goal. Your goal is to develop sustainable results. So again, for individuals, what are some of the things that you're holding on to? What approaches do you have? And again, there's lots of different examples here. If anybody has any questions or comments, we can weave them in. But one of the most common ones that I see now, just in the language that people use, is around technology and data. And again, we have to embrace technology and new ways of doing things. And data will continue to drive things. That's a no-brainer. And it could be dangerous for me to say what I'm about to say. And this, some people might castigate me as one of those geriatric millennials. I think we're in the same age. I think we're in that upper echelon. People might say, Joe, what do you want to go back to do things the old way? You're setting aside technology and data? I said, no, but people, they might put all their eggs in some new technology. They think it's going to be an app that's going to solve their problems. And once you get that mindset, because so many people agree with it, right? So many people agree with it. And you start to forget the older ways of doing things that may have worked. You might forget that, an Excel sheet can actually be the best tool for the job in a given situation. Well, that's not a sustainable development strategy. You have all these tools at your disposal. Don't limit yourself to one or two. So again, from a coaching standpoint, when I'm working with people, you're asking questions about, all right, well, why are you leaning on this? How have you revisited this? Why do you keep turning to these new tools every 6 months and instead of this one that you've already spent, $1 million on to develop? Those are the types of things that in this phase, they cause people to measure performance in a way that isn't fully aligned with their ultimate objective, with what they identified in step one. So again, I'll stop there if there's any questions or stuff, lest I continue rambling on. Other examples from the oil and gas industry about people who, again, their definition of performance is sometimes misaligned with their ultimate objective.
So in this category, would you say that this is the time to be able to do kind of like a risk assessment of like, I'm going to put all my energy into this one, and then like said, like an app, or like into a startup or something like that. I'm going to put all my energy into this one. What is, let's do the risk assessment of like, is the risk reward really there to be able to put your free time efforts or your daily efforts or your career into that category? Is that where that would come in? Because that's what's coming to my mind right now is like the risk versus reward.
Yeah, I think, and I think maybe instead of risk assessment, so I think you're on the right track there. I would probably argue it's more of an energy assessment or a time assessment to say, all right, are these things that we're focused on in this development phase, are they still relevant? And are they getting us closer to our bottom line? And where that's really important, David, from an individual standpoint or from the leader of an organization, is on things that are good and important. Again, safety is one of those. Just like, again, out of context, people could say, oh, Joe was trying to dismiss technology. Well, I'm not going to dismiss safety because I talk about it all the time. I think that's one of the greatest benefits of being in oil and gas, especially starting off with Schlumberger, is you get this safety mentality, beaten into you, and that's a good thing. But if all you're doing is making decisions based on being the safest company possible, instead of being the best producer of natural gas or oil or whatever the case might be, who is also the safest company out there ever, well, again, you're going to be investing time and energy that might not be necessary, right? anything with environmental stuff and ESG. These companies, unless you are selling safety products and services, you don't produce safety. And same thing from the environmental standpoint. You produce hydrocarbons. Yes, you want to do it in the most environmentally friendly way possible. Absolutely. But that's not your mission. So if your development strategy, creeps into being focused on these things that actually are complementary and important and necessary, but they become the focus, again, you're going to be stuck. You're not going to be moving forward in a sustainable manner. And quite frankly, when with the industry under the microscope and consolidation and all these things happening, you're not going to be as successful as you would otherwise if your strategy was actually continually revisiting it and made sure that it's aligned with what your ultimate purpose is.
Here's a great question. It's from Kirk. So it's a little bit different. Sorry, I got to get my cable here is like stuck under the wheels of my desk. I'm trying not to trip and fall. Safety first, you guys. All right, any tips for standing out in such a flooded job market? Seems very difficult to be anything other than just another applicant in the stack.
Great question, common question. The first thing to do, of course, is to reach out to Melanie Woods or Amanda Rico and make sure you check all the boxes from a logistical standpoint. There's no reason, everything is statistics, right? It's just improving your odds of success and each step along the way. And go back to a couple of weeks ago, right, with Todd Brooker. It's like reserves, right? It's probability. There's no guarantees, but if you're booking proved reserves, you're saying there's at least a 90% chance, or if it's probable reserve 50%, whatever the case is. So the first thing to keep in mind is that everything you're doing is just improving your odds. And if you have that mindset, instead of saying everything is black and white and I either made a mistake on my resume or my LinkedIn or whatever, or not, no, just each step along the way, make the decision that you think is going to, move you closer to your ultimate destination. So that's a very high level answer. I think from a practical standpoint, again, in addition to listening to all the experts out there in terms of your obviously your resume and your profile, is asking yourself what that identity is. What is your differentiator? Ask yourself, ask other people, because it's not going to be in how many classes you've had. It's not going to be your GPA, your school, your experience, because you're absolutely right. There is tons of competition, hundreds of applications sometimes for a single reservoir engineering job, for example. So the better sense you have of yourself. So again, know your industry, but also know yourself. Once you have that and you can work backwards and you can say, all right, well, it happens to be, I don't know, I love crocheting, case might be. How do you weave that and make yourself more interesting? And again, that could be difficult to do on a resume. I want to be very clear. I'm not a marketing guru. So I'm not going to go and I don't help people come up with some new catchy tagline necessarily that's going to, draw attention to them just so they get, more eyes on it. What my goal is to put yourself in a position so that when you're having conversations with people, when you get that first interview, now you're ready to hit the ground running and you are more interested because you have a better sense of yourself. And again, there's some other tactical tools we can talk about, but it all starts with, all right, what's your identity? Who are you? If you're going in there and you're just saying that I'm a drilling engineer, I'm a geologist, I'm a procurement manager, whatever it happens to be, if that's your starting point, how quickly do you think you're going to be dismissed or at least put into the same bucket with everybody else? Pretty quick. So I would say it's taking advantage of opportunities to differentiate yourself. One other thing I'll say, and I might get a little bit ahead of myself because I think we'll touch on this probably as we go along, is from a communication standpoint. The more personal you can be with someone, and this, you have to do this practically, right? I mean, you can't have a personalized conversation with every single person that you meet on LinkedIn necessarily, but the more personalized you can be, you're going to naturally share who you are and that you're not just a fill in the blank title. And I will say that from my own career, from the people I work with, the amount of selectively, what do you want to say, personalized conversations that you have with people, those will pay off in the long run. So it's and I hate to lean on cliches, quality over quantity or whatever, but you could do both. But when push comes to shove, I tend to lean more on the quality side as a differentiator for you in a flooded job market. So.
I always think of when people are trying to help differentiate themselves and be able to do better in job interviews and stuff like that. I always like to think about the Gordon Ramsay show, Hell's Kitchen. And it's like every time that they do the elimination, he brings up 2 or 3 chefs. And he always asks the exact same question. And it blows my mind how many times watching the show, because I'm just a fan of the show. It's something I really like. But like, he's been doing this for years, and he'll say, "Why should I keep you?" He asks that question all, like, "Why should you stay? Why should you stay on the show? Why should I keep you?" And he might ask the same chef 3 weeks in a row that's been down at the front. And it's just like, if you don't have an answer to that question, if they put you in front of, like, they lined up 4 drilling engineers next to you, and they said, "Why should we pick you?" If you don't have the most like ground shaking response to that, like that just comes from deep within, then I really feel like you haven't taken the time to know who you are, what your value proposition is, and what you can bring to the table to be able to effectively bring a positive ROI to that company. It's like you do have to, like you said, you got to be able to know yourself and then be able to articulate and communicate that to somebody else in a effective manner to make them really go, "Wow, this is the person." And if you haven't taken the time to stand in front of the mirror and do that, or with your significant other, or talk to your dog, you're missing some steps. Like you're just shorting yourself. And and maybe it is one of those things where, like, if you don't know what your differentiator is, then that needs
to wrap up that question and your answer, and maybe bring in your Lego friends that you introduced us to. It's like, these people that have great resumes and all these things. If you just take all those pieces and now you're trying to build up with those and tell a story, without some vision of what you want to build, it might not go over well if you're targeting a specific company. You want to work the other direction. Who are you? And now let's fill in the blanks with all of the various pieces from your career, right? That's if you're a kid and you're out there and you have engineering mind and you want to just build and be an inventor, yeah, fine, take all those blocks and go build something and have fun for a couple hours. But in this case, what are you building towards? So I think you're spot on there. And I think, the question that you just asked, I'll give you credit, not Gordon Ramsay, but again, why should I hire you? What value do you bring? You could be anybody could be a coach. I mean, sometimes it's amazing what a simple question like that, how that could transform somebody. And quite frankly, I don't say embarrass them, but make them say, "Oh crap, I just invested all this time tweaking my resume, and shit, now that you've asked that question, I think I got to go back to the drawing board." So yeah, again, coaching is not rocket science. Sometimes it's as simple as a question like that, and then continuing to ask it because people forget it.
It's a great one. All right, let's move on to the next one. I think we had a question in here, or I should say this, Brian put in here, there's a 50-50 chance that it won't be a 50-50 chance. So great stuff from him. All right, so moving along with the next one you said was production.
Sure. So obviously you identify what you want to do, who you are, who your company is. You figure out some sort of strategy to again, extract your individual resources, your personal resources, your company's resources, or deliver whatever service you're delivering. None of that does any good, of course, if you don't produce any results. But the problem is, as you produce results, is that sometimes those results don't necessarily speak for themselves. And again, this is a very common problem. Probably the best parallel for oil and gas industry is when you bring a new well online, right? And you can have some enormous initial production rates, but those high IPs might not correlate to long-term performance. And conversely, you might have, a clunker of a well that you just keep nice and steady, you maintain pressure, and it winds up outperforming, every other well in the field. And too often, especially again, in this world where it's all about the data, it's all about the data, it's all about the data, there's a lot of misinterpretation of data, both literal data and figurative data. Case in point, again, going back to the people that are in a job transition. A low GPA is not necessarily indicative of how much value that person is going to bring to a company, and vice versa, right? Yeah, and again, I opened up the show, right? I mean, if I had a better GPA, if I had nice internships and everything, I probably wouldn't be in oil and gas, and I can't even imagine what life would be like that, right? I mean, that's the reality. And again, I'd like to say there was some thought out thing, in college thinking, all right, I'm going to err on having a little bit more fun and building relationships. And that's going to be more important than, having better grades. No, going back to statistics, statistically, better grades are going to give you more opportunities and so on and so forth. So I need to be careful saying that. I shared that anecdote with a group of high schoolers last year, giving a presentation about oil and gas, my career and all this, and it started getting questions like, so do you recommend we don't get internships? It's kind of like, gosh, right, take a step back here. But practically speaking, when you have some vision of what you want, you start to recognize that, again, some of those nitty gritty things might not matter as much. And that's so true for a company. That, again, they start getting focused on the wrong thing, the wrong metrics. And they also don't see how those metrics are maybe connected or disconnected or almost inverse to some other department. And fortunately, in my time at EQT, spent the last year standing up a data governance and analytics group. And while there's all kinds of great technical stuff that my team was doing that I didn't fully understand, one of the biggest takeaways from that is when we went around and talked to different leaders within the organization and revealed how connected what their team was doing and the results that they were delivering, and they were patting themselves on the back, how disconnected sometimes they were from other groups. And that wasn't necessarily always a bad thing, but it was just eye-opening for some people to see, again, how sometimes up for one team is down for another. And it seems like common sense. I mean, I think people see it all the time, but if you don't have a picture of that from a corporate standpoint and from your own life, where again, results might not speak for themselves, then you're asking for trouble. So in this pillar, this leadership pillar, I think one of the things I would challenge other people or anybody to ask is, when you have bad results, when you make a mistake, when you took a job that you shouldn't have, and you have to leave after 6 months and it didn't work out, or if you're in a hiring position, you hire somebody and it didn't work out, or you make a bad decision at work, you're a CEO and you decide to acquire some company and it turns out that was a bad idea. The question is, do those bad results speak for themselves? Do they reflect on you as a leader? Do they reflect on you as a decision maker? If you have enough decisions and they're all bad, then yeah, they probably do. But one or two bad decisions doesn't define you. So that's probably, again, one of the big things you see now with a lot of people that are in transition. And do I do this? Do I apply for this job? Oh, should I have sent this version of my resume to somebody else? Like I said earlier, it's statistics. You make the best guess and you move on. And if you're halfway intelligent and you're doing the right things and you have the right framework in place, then maybe you're going to be right 80% of the time. And that's pretty darn good. But if you're putting all your eggs in one basket and you're only making one decision and it turns out to be bad and that's all people see, well, you're in trouble. So again, encourage people, especially with things as will continue to be as volatile as they are, is to remember that generally what you produce is going to reflect who you are and what you're capable of. But when you're just looking at a single snapshot, whether it's positive or negative, whether you have a 4.0 GPA or not, it might not be indicative of what you're capable of and of the value that you can bring to an organization. So,
great stuff. So Waz says it, and it is very important as well when you are switching careers because you need to transfer your abilities. I think he was speaking to the prior area, but yes.
Yeah. And what do those abilities do? That's the other thing. And again, I promise I'll shut up here.
No.
Those abilities.
Hey, we got all day, Joe. We got all day. I'm enjoying this. So this is just people watching us have a conversation.
Our kids, their last day of school, it ends in 3 hours. So I'm happy to fill in 3 hours with good, normal adult conversation before summer kicks off here. So I'm all in, but I'm sure we could finish up before then. But to his point there, the abilities you have, again, they're not ends in and of themselves. It's like the Lego pieces. I don't want just somebody to come to me with a, hey, look at all these Lego pieces I have. It's like, no, well, what can you build with them? What are you actually able to do with them? Because going back to the prior question, there's a lot of people that can, put Legos together and make some interesting things. There's tons of people out there. Tell me what's different about you and how you can take those abilities. What is it? What good is it that you are the best Python coder in North America? Yeah, if I'm hiring somebody who needs to know Python, sure, I might check the box and roll with it. But if there's 10 other people there, and you're the only one that's telling me that, all right, I have these skills, and oh, by the way, this is how I connect them to whatever. Oh, by the way, I know your industry. I know oil and gas, and this is how my skills tie in and have tied in. That is a big differentiator. And it's, people that are able to do that are not as, my experience, they're not as common as they think. They you think you have your resume together, you have your LinkedIn profile, it all sounds great, it's well worded. If it's not saying how everything is connected and what you're going to build, again, you're going to get lumped in with everybody else, unfortunately.
I think that's a great example to be able to think of. It's like I can build this Lego set based off of the instructions that came with the box. There we go. Or you took what came in the box and you built something specific to what you wanted, or you put in your own imagination and you built something completely different that's never been seen before.
Yeah. But
so that
again, but the caveat again is going back to, pillars 1 and 2, there still needs to be some alignment. So we all can't just be Imagineers who are out there just, you can have your, whatever, skunkworks teams and companies.
Built for purpose. Again, built to what the parameters of the build were or something
exactly.
Like that.
So great analogy there. And
so if anybody hasn't watched, go watch the Lego Masters show. That was a great one. Especially even they did season 1 last year. They already debuted season 2 this week. And then there's also Lego Masters Australia. So good ones there. All right. So the next one here. So we've done production. Now it's time for transportation.
That's it. So you've produced results. You're producing hydrocarbons. That's great. Doesn't do you any good, of course, if you can't move them to some market, if you can't sell them. And so what do you need? You need a transportation network. So whether you call this midstream or transportation or transmission or whatever it happens to be, you need to get from A to B. And so in this phase, in this pillar, we're talking about communication, because by and large, when you're a leader, again, we've talked a lot about people who might be in career transitions, but even if you're the CEO of a company, there's a lot of good things hopefully going on with your company that you need to communicate. You need to communicate to stakeholders across the board, internal stakeholders, your direct team, staff, service suppliers, board members, whatever the stakeholders are. You got a lot of communication you got to do. You got a big network, right? And so the questions that you need to ask yourself in this step, again, whether you are a CEO who's trying to communicate some sort of message and some sort of results, or whether you're a job applicant trying to communicate what value you bring to an organization, you need to ask yourself 2 things. 1, where might there be bottlenecks in my communication strategy, my communication network? Where is the message that I'm trying to relay getting held up? And the second thing you need to ask is, where might there be some sort of leak, some sort of corrosion that's causing my message to maybe transform into something that I do not want, that could lead to an uncontrolled release, an explosion, or something like that. So 2 different sort of, again, opposite things: bottleneck and corrosion, which can lead to a release. And practically speaking, again, going back to maybe the CEO example, if you have a great message, you're sharing it with your, say, executive team or everybody close to you, and everybody's rah-rah, they know it's good. You brought in consultants that have said this message is great. And then you're finding that it's not trickling down to people that need to hear it, and you start asking questions, right? But if you're not in a position where you're asking those questions, or people underneath you are asking the questions to ask why your message is getting held up, well, again, you're asking for trouble. And in many cases, leaders, unfortunately, don't have the network to navigate around. When you have a different question pop up or some bottleneck, do you have the flexibility to go in another direction? So going back to some of the earlier questions about how you differentiate yourself. Well, if you are in an interview and you don't like the direction that it's going because you're not able to communicate what you're able to do, you need to have some ways to reroute that conversation and get back on track and make sure if you have 30 minutes with somebody that you're relaying that message, that ultimate goal to somebody. So you need to be able to, again, think on your feet. This whole GPS idea, right? Is, hey, I got an ultimate destination. Maybe I need to take a different path, but I got to get there. And so, those are the questions you need to ask. How nimble are you? What tools do you have to reroute as needed? Are you relying on one single interconnect, if you will, that could be shut down? There's a cyber attack, for example, like a couple of weeks ago, right? Are you too reliant on one way of communicating? Are you all email and you never pick up the phone? Are you all Zoom and you never walk over to somebody's desk, or whatever the case might be? So having all of those different channels, again, regardless of whether you're a formal leader or whether you're trying to communicate with a hiring manager, all your eggs are in one basket, and that basket gets tossed out or shut down, again, you're asking for trouble. On the corrosion side, this is where your message, again, might sound good to you, but do you have other people that are out there, kind of putting their hat on and saying, this could be misinterpreted? Everything you're saying, is pretty good, but this one little thing here can completely derail you. And we know in 2021, in this cancel culture, it doesn't take much for your message to be skewed, or something that you say innocently can turn into something not so good. And I was thinking about this a little bit last night, David, when you shared in your post about sending this email. And it's like, you could put hours and hours into an email and have it perfect, but if it's misinterpreted by the person on the other end, well, again, it could be corrosive. And so if you're in a leadership position or just an individual who's sending out a cover letter, you have people around you who you can trust to say, hey, can you give this a read? Can you let me know, is there anything in here that could be, maybe tweaked a little? And you want to be doing that yourself, and you want other people to, again, identify those areas of erosion. And I've seen it in corporate environment where leaders are they're unwittingly screwing up their odds of success because the things they say are not landing in the way that you want it to land. So again, that's this idea here of clearly, we could talk for hours about communication and the importance of it, but I think for today, for the people that are listening, ask yourselves, do you have different paths to communicate your message, and how might you be, hurting your message? And maybe one final note for you, David, again, thinking about your locksmith and all of these episodes, and everything's just, I think, fantastic, and I'm sure everybody tells you that. But do you have people out there who are willing to say, hey, David, on this last episode, you said something, I don't know how many people would have heard it this way, but you may have insulted, everyone who lives in the Southern Hemisphere, or you may have you seem like the nicest guy going, and I know you didn't mean anything by this, but you realize that somebody out of context could, what you just said may see it as racist, sexist, something like that. You're probably going to be shocked and say, whoa, what do you mean? Tell me more. But if you're not asking people for that, I guarantee if somebody scrolled through every one of your episodes and read through the transcripts and everything, they find a couple things that might be a little disconcerting, and you might want to be aware of that, because again, all of this is about awareness. It's about being conscious. Conscious leadership doesn't mean you still don't say something that might be offensive. Conscious leadership means you're aware of the impact that it might have. And in this transportation step, this communication step, that's what it's about. It's awareness. If you want to come across as some hardened leader, and you need to risk somebody saying, wow, this guy really sounds like a jerk, but you're doing it with intention, that's a hell of a lot different than somebody who unwittingly sounds like a jerk every time they talk, and nobody has the guts to tell them. So that's
I could definitely say this. I didn't quite realize I dropped so many F-bombs in the Spanish only episode. That was something I was not aware of until people told me afterwards. And then I've also been told this week that I'm kind of goofy. They didn't, people are like, you're a little goofy on your show. But that is something I'm completely aware of. So I'm okay with that one. All right, guys, if you guys are watching, we still got plenty of people watching. If you guys have any questions for Joe, please be sure to throw them out there. All right, so now we'll move on to the number 5, because we still haven't gotten any questions here. But this is some great context for being able to make sure that you get your message out there. And one of the things I always like to say is, if you are trying to get a message out there, if you can know the form or the channel that the receiving audience likes to be able to receive it, whatever is their most apt way of being able to communicate, whether it's text message, email, Slack, YouTube, whatever. If you're trying to get that message out there and you can find out which way the audience wants to receive it the most, then use that as your advantage or to your advantage to being able to get the message out there. And then that helps exponentially in being able to make sure that at least the message reaches its location. And then obviously the corrosion stuff, having an unbiased person look over it, not just somebody who wants to kiss your butt, having the unbiased person who can tell you the truth. The harsher the news, the truer the friend. So with that one, we'll move to the next one. So here we go. Distribution.
All right. Well, in this distribution phase, this is the downstream phase. This is where, again, you're talking about your customers, which means, David, you set this up perfectly. Know your audience, know how they like to receive information, know what they want, because you don't do all of this unless you can essentially sell it. And the problem in the oil and gas industry is that we're in a commodity business. And we've already spoken a couple times with some of the questions about differentiating yourself, right? Because in a commodity business, that's what you need to do. You need to differentiate yourself. The product that you're selling is the same as anybody else. It has the same molecular structure, the same value. The difference is, can you get it to a different market? Can you get it there faster? Can you get it in a better manner? Obviously, the big thing now is, can you produce your hydrocarbons in a more responsible way? Can you get that coveted ESG stamp or whatever it happens to be? So companies are looking for ways to differentiate themselves, because at the end of the day, we're all selling the same thing. And if you are a reservoir engineer, geologist, whatever the case might be, and your resume looks the same as hundreds of other people, well, you're going to start looking like a commodity. And one of the best ways to differentiate yourself is to know your ultimate audience, to know what they want. And it's important to note, David, that, not just doing the logistical things like you said, know what form people want questions in, know what channels they want to use. That's I don't say common sense, but that's the bare minimum. Ultimately, what you want to do is you want to ask questions and you want to deliver your message and you want to convey yourself and your results and everything in those prior 4 pillars. You want to do that in a way that's going to make the person on the other end confident in your abilities. It's about confidence. When I talk about distribution, this downstream phase, when I talk about not being a commodity, a lot of people think, oh, that's self-preservation, right? You're going to go work with a leader and it's all about, making themselves stand out. And again, we talked about this a little bit from some of the questions. Yeah, clearly you want to stand out. You want your brand to be good, but it's not just about standing out. And it's definitely not just about self-preservation. It's about building confidence in your customers, if you will. Figurative customers, literal customers, whatever they are. Because when they're confident in what you're offering, and when you don't sound like everybody else, when you don't sound like every other leader who's gone through some sort of leadership training program and is spouting some sort of cliched things left and right and doesn't have a lot of substance, when you don't sound like those leaders, you're going to be in a better position. Because everybody's job, let's assume everybody's job is safe. But you're working for somebody who is really no different from every other leader. In your mind, you might start saying, well, this guy's no good. I'm better than him. I mean, there's all these other people. He's not inspiring in any way. She's just, again, reading off of some script almost. And once you start bleeding confidence, well, your company is going to start underperforming, or your customers are going to be inclined to go elsewhere. Or again, your board might say, hey, if you're upper echelon, they might say, yeah, there's 10 other potential leaders who can come in and do the job. So there's that practical element of differentiating yourself and avoiding becoming a commodity. But realistically, it comes down to confidence. And one of the best ways to show confidence is to understand all 5 of the pillars of the energy life cycle and in turn of this leadership framework that we've talked about. Understand yourself, understand what you can bring to the table, understand the best way to do it, not just the standard way, but the best way. Understand how to interpret results, understand how to communicate your message. And when you have that full understanding, when you know your industry, as the famous David Gibson often says, when you know your industry, when you know yourself, when you know your customers, well, you know that you are putting yourself in the best position possible to succeed. So again, that's really what this is all about. It's just boosting your odds of success. So with that, David, those are the 5 pillars.
So with all of this, what has been some of the most eureka moments for some of your clients? Like, what are some of the, if you can share a story, essentially a white paper, what's happened for you or with your clients, I should say.
Sure. I think one of the more eureka, interesting ones is someone who I would say, he meets the pedigree, the prototypical CEO type. Checks all the boxes, could probably lead any oil and gas company, and going through these steps, these pillars, identified that the path he was on wasn't going to lead to this sustained satisfaction that he was ultimately after. And I think what was almost a eureka moment for me and for him and probably for anybody that would look at this objectively, was that how could this person not stay on this path? Everything is there. Like we talked about earlier, everything just makes sense. He just push forward, and 30 years from now, I could be running the world. But when you go through these things and you're asking the right questions, you realize what's important, what's not important. And long story short, this person left industry. He started a company. He was business owner route, done the corporate, route. And is now in a role that some might say is inconsistent with his pedigree and with his knowledge and his abilities. He's working for the government. I mean, that is not what I think we all strive for, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of good allies, obviously, in government, from local government up through federal government, but there also seems to be, in many cases, a disconnect between a lot of people in industry who are doing these things, who have a certain, approach to work, a certain appreciation for some of the things that we have to do in this 24/7 industry that we work in. And then to go into this role that some might say is, counter to some of that. somewhat limiting. This is, working in government, you're not supposed to be making tens of millions of dollars necessarily, but it seems like a complete deviation. But when you look behind the curtain, under the hood, whatever analogy you want to use, and you understand kind of what's fueling this person, what the ultimate objectives are, and you work backwards from that, this is where he landed. And, again, to me, that shows the power of asking the right questions, of slowing down, of taking this GPS approach where, somebody could say, oh, here is your roadmap. Here is your path. Here's how you're going to be successful. And here's how you're going to measure it. And here's all the metrics that you can have while driving. And here you go. But instead, you have a GPS that says, hey, you want to take the scenic route instead? Do you want to take a pit stop over here? That's a little different animal because you get to decide, you get to choose. And you're there and you're conscious and you have your hands on the wheel. And in this particular instance, again, this was not the path that I think a lot of people would have predicted for this.
So with this, like you being a coach, and obviously there's, like we said at the very beginning, there's a lot of other coaches out there, and self-help books and cliches that are posted on Instagram and on LinkedIn every single day. If you were to give advice to everybody out there watching that might be interested in seeking out a mentor or an executive coach or just a coach in general, what are some of the warning signs that you would say, like if you see these types of things, or if they're asking these types of questions or doing certain things, that they should be red flags for them?
If you find that they're not asking many questions, if the interactions between you and this person, this potential resource, tends to be more of them as an advisor and you as a consumer, that's not what you want. Again, you can consume. You have a computer. Everybody can go out, a computer, a phone. You can digest and ingest, and you can spend 24/7 looking at this stuff. So if you can't find somebody that's willing to ask you questions and then help guide you towards the right resources, that's not the right person. That's a coach. A coach is there to ask you questions. Now, again, just like we talked about before, you can get this false idea of what a coach is, and somebody never offers advice. It's what's the one? There's a joke out there, right? If somebody needs to go find the restroom and they come and ask you, hey, can you tell me where the bathroom is? Well, what would you say, David? You would say, oh, it's just around the corner. A coach would say, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how badly do you really need to go? Where have you found bathrooms before? What, tell me a little bit more. Tell me a little bit more. You need somebody who can, sometimes say, hey, guess what? There's an accident up ahead. You're going to want to go this way. Like that. You need that. So if you find somebody that, can't kind of wear both hats of poking you a little bit and telling you when you're off, or what did you say before? When you're goofy? Hey, David, you're goofy? Yeah, I know. You need a little bit of that, but you need a lot of people who are willing to ask questions. And that's how you're going to get better solutions, not by somebody just, offering their opinions. Because as you know, there might be millions of coaches out there, but there's, billions of opinions proliferating second by second out there. And you don't need another opinion necessarily.
So what's a great way for somebody to be able to, ask themselves the question, to be able to see if it's the right time to be able to get a coach?
Yeah, I think you could argue it's always the right time to get a coach. The key is, what is a coach? I think you said earlier, if you have a trusted person, a spouse, a girlfriend, boyfriend, a colleague, whatever, they can be coaches. They don't have to wear a formal coach. So you should always be looking out for people that can help coach you. And it doesn't have to be a formal arrangement. And I think the point where you might, determine whether you want to get a formal coach, or, for people in a company that determine whether to get a formal coach or not. Honestly, it's when you recognize that you have a lot more potential that, is not getting out there. That's it. It's not when there's a problem necessarily. It could be people, again, there's a lot of people that have coaches, they're already, doing swimmingly. It's when there's a lot more potential than is, bubbling up, and you need people to help extract it. When you have that feeling, when you know that you have more to give and you're not able to do it for some reason, that's the time to ask for a coach. Because again, an individual person who is coach-like, if you will, and asking the right questions is going to be able to extract that out of you more so than any other book, any other podcast, As much as I hope people walk away from this with, again, some questions to ask themselves, with a framework to ask themselves, again, how well they're growing, protecting, sustaining success at each step along the way. Yeah, I hope some people, can walk away with some of this. But all of this can be trumped by somebody in 2 minutes asking you a good question that now sends you down a path that helps you extract what's inside of you. So long-winded answer, of course, but it's when you have that feeling that there's more there, that you're stuck and you're not able to move forward in a sustainable manner.
Well, so to be able to go through that, somebody feels like it's the right time. What's the best way to be able to get in touch with you?
Well, LinkedIn, of course, is always a popular way to go. Website is wittingpartners.com, WITTING. So some information there. Always happy to answer questions. But typically it starts with a question, right? That's what I do as a coach. I ask questions. People have a question for me, ask. Happy to give an answer. You might get a question back from me, and that's kind of what I do sometimes to again gauge where you're at. I'm not going to throw stuff at you just for fun. I want to know kind of what you need and where you're at, and none of this stuff is linear, David. We went through 1 to 5, of course, but clearly, we wind a path. We spend most of our time talking about step number 5, I think, and differentiating yourself. And that's it. I don't offer people, hey, here's the program, here you go. No, if we need to talk about communication today, we're going to talk about communication today. So ask a question, share, reach out and say, hey, here's what's going on with me. What do you think? You could skip the formalities. You don't just jump right in and let me know what you're thinking. Let me know, where your hurdles are. Let me know where you're stuck and where you're having issues kind of steering around some potential barriers or challenges in your life. So again, I know I talked about, making formal or personalizing relationships. Cut to the chase. What's going on? Where are you struggling?
Well, Joe, thank you so much for being on the show today. Questions, comment section has been kind of quiet, but I think that's just because everybody is intently listening. All right. So for everybody that is still watching, we're going to go ahead and do the giveaway now. I'll give everybody just a second to be able to do #Gibson once more. So we pull up brand, click this button, and then click this one. #Gibson. Give you guys one more chance to be able to get in there and be able to do this. Like I said, Joe, thank you so much for being here. I know I learned a lot, and I've probably got some questions I need to ask myself before I run off and start asking you. But for anybody else that is out there, we'll do this one. So we've got Jeff Steele asking, how do you confront ageism? While we're doing that, we'll let everybody know. #Gibson in the comment section. We'll do the giveaway here in just a second. So, Joe, take that one away, please, sir.
So one of the most effective methods that I've seen is humor. Honestly, I think by and large, and I'm going to talk about ageism from we're going to talk to people that are on the older end of the age spectrum. I think that there's a lot of people who have 30, 40 years of experience that can share stories that really humanize them and show that intrinsic value. And again, I'm talking once you're in front of somebody and you're engaged with somebody, but building that rapport, people with more experience have a whole big toolbox that makes it easier for them to build rapport. And that's something you can work on. I work on people with that, right? I've currently working with somebody who's, I think 35 years in the industry, at the tail end, looking for something else to do for the next couple of years. And one of the best things to do is find out how you can build rapport better with people than others. And one of the best ways that I find is humor. And those are things you can work on, right? Have some of these anecdotes, some of these stories from your experience that nobody else can touch, right? And I know that might seem a little gimmicky or hokey, but in terms of being prepared to move left or right, if you're in an interview and you get in front of somebody, man, I'll tell you, being able to not have them just bucket you in with everybody else and say, all right, same resume as everybody else, but this guy or gal, maybe has 10 years left. Don't even let them do that. Let them see that you're the type of person you want around because you bring this energy, you bring this information, this knowledge that nobody else has. So again, I know that probably more of a step 2 or step 3. I would certainly, again, lean on the likes of Amanda Rico, Melanie Woods, in terms of confronting that maybe on the front end with your resume and everything else you have out there. But practically speaking, you, by and large, when you have more years of experience, you have more opportunities to build rapport and to connect with people in a way that other people with less experience, less stories are able to do.
Always keep building your brand. All right, guys, let's do a quick giveaway. Here we go. Add this to the stream. Everybody's commented to their thing and draw it. I need to do the drum roll thing. I still need to get that going. And Andrew Wilcox. I have a feeling that she's won before. Did she win before? I don't know. Andrew, you're the winner of the day. Send me a DM. We'll get you hooked up with one of the drill bits. I don't have one of them handy right now, but we'll send one off to you. Thanks for being here and watching the show. All right, guys. Thanks for everybody for being here. Joe, thanks for being such an amazing guest there. For anybody that needs to, be sure to look up Joe out there on LinkedIn. He is tagged in the post here, so you can find him there, as well as you've also got your own podcast and the Winning Partners website. Everybody's now still doing the hashtag Gibson. And for PS, for anybody who wanted to know, once again, the filming location it was partially made possible by Theodore Roosevelt, and I'm east of the Mississippi. So somebody, did we get a guess? Did we get a guess? Somebody said Yellowstone? Can we have he said, can we have a summary of the 5 pillars? Here you go.
Sure,
Summary. Exploration, development, production, transportation, distribution. There's your summary. Very quick one, but that is it. All right. Now everybody's guessing on. We got Smoky Mountains, Yellowstone. I typed Yellowstone, east of the Mississippi. All right. We got Katie says, thanks, David, for this show. Your guest is very comprehensive. I thought so too. All right, guys. Maybe we'll have Andrew come on next week and tell us what the actual location was. Hopefully by then she's already got a job and no need for her to be able to come on the show. But I enjoy having her on the show, just like I enjoyed having Joe here. Also, one other thing, I want to be able to throw this out there before I forget, because I did upload it. June 16th. Oh, that thing's still on the screen. Hold on. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. June 16th, 9 a.m. That's a Wednesday. Managed pressure drilling event. Be sure to tune in and watch that one. We have all of the MPD companies getting on and talking to us. We're going to have operators from Equinor, BP, and Petronas on the panel. So that's going to be really exciting to have some of the industry leaders being able to talk about MPD and what they're looking for as well. So if you are in that segment or if you're interested in learning more about it, be sure and tune in. The second installment of a virtual conference event. And of course, it's free and it'll be hosted here on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and everything else. And I've got a little blinking light that says that my internet's not running too well. So better time than any to be able to get out of here. Joe, thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate it. And as always, everybody, make sure I cue this up right. Know your industry.